to explain the export system on Godot. I'm going to explain what the most important parts first, and then I'll talk about the rest, but I might be all over the place because it is confusing and I don't remember really well the flow there, so I'm gonna just go over the flow charts that I did here and then talk about the most important parts and the conclusion that I got to. And I think there is a bug on the most recent version, which is the version of Godot that is available for you to download on their GitHub repository, which is not the stable one. The stable one works fine, but the one that is on development now, I think it doesn't work very well. So I'm probably gonna show this later. I'm just gonna wait to see if it is streaming. Start talking about it. Usually YouTube takes longer to start. Yeah, so the most important thing to understand is that the exports. So the way you export is you open the engine, the editor version. So if you're compiling from source, you're gonna use this flag here. Basically, the main thing that it matters here is the target. I think the platform is not necessary, but it's probably better to put. I'm on Windows, and all the stuff that I'm gonna talk about is related to Windows because that's what I'm using now. So when you put target equals editor, it's just gonna compile the executable version that is gonna open the project manager when you execute it. If you put target equals template, then what's gonna happen is the final executable is gonna expect a project, and this is just what the template is. The template is the engine executable. It's pretty much a copy of the engine executable that could be created with any compilation tags you want to put here. So you can pass other tags to remove the editor, for example, and some other tools to optimize the build. And then at the end, you're just gonna get the final executable, and that's the thing that they're gonna use as a template. So that's pretty much all that it is. And if you wanna open the project manager instead, then you put the target equals editor flag, and then it opens the project manager instead of opening or trying to run the game. So that's I compiled, and that's the one that I have here. So I opened the project. I opened the executable, which is going to be on the binary folder, which is this one. I removed the other ones that I had here, but yeah. So to export, you just go on projects and then export, and then you click on add here. So what's going to happen is that on the source code, the Godot is going to create a file called export presets config on the root directory of your project. This is this file here. So if you don't have any of this information here, and it's the first time that you're going to click on add, it's just going to create the file. And that's the file that is going to contain everything that you have here when you click here. So the export preset config is the thing that holds the configuration here. And then when you open the export project, it's just going to open the file selector to select what kind of executable you want to use as the template. So, or you can go in here and then select first and then just click here, then click on save. And then what's gonna happen is that it's just gonna put the final executable of the game on the root engine. And the most important part to understand is that this executable is just the engine itself. So there is just a copy of the engine. Yeah. The only difference that it has here on this version, and this is the main thing that I'm trying to figure out now, which is like right now there's a bug. So if I click here, I just create a simple project to test this. So it's just one scene. It's gonna take a longer time because I'm using OBS. So usually when you use OBS, it makes everything else slower. But it just opens the project. But if I put this on another folder, then it doesn't work. And this only happens on this latest version. If you get Godot from the repo, the main repo, then it's gonna happen. This is gonna happen, which it says that it expects this .package file. And I only got this file here because I selected this embed package here option. And what this does is just puts the package file in this together with the executable. So if you don't click on this, and you export, it's just going to create two different files. One's going to be the package, other one is going to be the game. But it doesn't matter for this version, because the problem with this version is that the executable expects you to have a project godot file on the same root as the project. So in this case, if I put this file here and I run, then it's just gonna give a segmentation fault. So the thing runs, but the problem is that you can't find the scene. But as long as you have all the resources you need and you have the project godot on the same folder, then it's gonna run fine. But this doesn't happen with the latest stable version, which is the 4.2.2 stable version. That one creates the final executable, and that's what I'm trying to figure out now. So that one, it doesn't matter where you put the executable, it's always going to run. But basically, it's going to run now. So I'm going to delete and then export again to show the package file. And all that the package file is just another, I'm going to show the function that creates the executable and the package file. But it's just a file that they manually write, and they put all the resources that are necessary to run the project. And on Windows, there's also another function that is going to use this program, which is called rcedit. And this is not a necessary thing to do. So the way that it works is that the function that creates this, the final executable, is going to look for this rcedit on the editor settings. Then once it finds it, it's going to manually build the command that executes the rcedit on the name of the executable, the final executable that you're going to create, and it's going to add additional information to the executable. So stuff like versioning and things like that. And I'm pretty sure that it gets from a file, but I don't remember exactly if it is the project godot file or if it's the export presets. But I guess I can look at. Once I get to the points, I'm going to see which one of the files is getting the information from. But the main thing I'm trying to figure out is why on the latest version it works. It doesn't work when you move the executable, and on the other version it works. And if you don't have any export templates, what's going to happen is when you open this, you're going to get an error message. And the reason why is because on Windows, it's going to check on a standard path depending on the operational system you're using. But on Windows, it's going to be on C, users, your username, AppData, roaming, godot, and then export templates. So it's going to look into this folder, and it's going to check based on the godot version you're running on the editor to see if you have a folder here which is going to have the export templates. So when you don't have this folder here, I believe I'm running this 4.3. So if I change the name here, it's going to give a message there when I open, warning message. And it's going to ask for me to download from the templates. And this install from file here, you can get it from the main website, from godot's website. So I'm going to search for, just to show the version that I'm using now, which is on the GitHub repo. And then godot's export template, which is also I got from the website. So I went to this link here, and then there's another link somewhere here. Yeah, this one. And this one, when you go here, when you click here, it's just gonna download there. And this is the export templates that they make it available. And that's the main thing that I didn't know before. This is just going to be the same as you downloading Godot from source code, which is, so if you download from here, that's going to be the version that I'm using now, which is 4.3.dev, which is the one that I'm talking about that has the bug. But if you don't want the one that has the bug, then you can go on the releases one. I think it's here, 4.2.2 stable. If you download the source code from this one, and then you build from source from this one, then you're not going to have problems. I think I'm going to show that now, and then after I show that, I'm going to go over the Excalibur flow there, and then I'll go over the source code and show the functions. It's kind of confusing to understand, to be honest. Yeah, but once you download this file from the website there, the export template, then you can install from file here, select the path, and then all the Godot is gonna do when you do that is just gonna install the folder on the path that I showed there, which is the standard path that they search for export templates. So it's basically just using the ones that you have here. And these ones are just the engine compiled with the template flag. So when you compile with the template flag is gonna run the engine with the resources you have. And basically, because the 4.3.dev fails if you don't have project godot, I assume that what's happening under the hood is that there's a class called project settings on the source code. That is the one that is gonna it's gonna hold the information for the settings on the editor, and or maybe it's the settings of the engine and the editor uses. Yeah, it's the settings of the engine because there's another class that holds the information for editor settings. So it uses the project settings, which is the engine settings, to get the information from the game. And then probably what's happening is that if you don't have, if you don't compile the engine with the right flags, then, or because on the latest version they changed something, then the final executable is not gonna be able to find the project. It's not gonna be able to run everything from the executable itself. It's gonna rely on searching for the project code or settings to figure out what's the game, what's the data relevant to the game. It's taking a long ass time. Basically, I have here, I downloaded on here. So this is the stable version, and I built from source as well. So if I remember, yeah, I have here. So I think I already exported using this one. Let me see if I changed the name. I'm just gonna delete this and this. So it doesn't work there if I do it the way that I was doing. So I'm just gonna open the editor on with the other version and then show that it's gonna work. Close AppData. And when you create the project on the project manager, when you create the project, what it does is just creates the folder, and then it automatically creates the project godot file. But I assume the point is just to work on the editor. It's just a necessary file for the editor. So the project manager probably looks for that folder and checks to see the project godot. If the folder has the project godot, and then uses that to open the project. Yeah, so this is the thing, because I'm using another version, it shows this message to change the version. But because I have the two folders there with the name of the two different versions, and the two folders are basically a copy of each other, I just changed the name. So they're using the same export template. So I'm gonna go here, here, here. When I put this on, and save. So same thing, it creates the executable. I'm gonna open here first, see if it's working, and then I pass there. This is basically what I'm trying to figure out now. I'm probably gonna open the two different projects and then try to compare to see what they are doing differently. It could be something with my build or some flag that you have to pass, but it can't be the flag because I compiled them with the exact same flags. The only thing that changed is the version that I'm using. Yeah, so now it works on the other folder. So it's something that they changed from one version to the last. I'm not really sure why they broke the. Because now, if you use the other version, it requires you to have the project godot on the folder, which is not very good, because obviously if you don't want to expose that, then it's kind of annoying. I'm gonna show the flow in the SkyDraw. I'm not sure why this is taking. Okay. Yeah, so this, you just click on the link there and it goes here, and then all that I did was download from source here, and then I pretty much just ran this command here to compile to the editor. So now let me go over the SkyDraw. It was very confusing, but basically, hopefully it's not that difficult to explain. So one of the confusing parts is that there's a bunch of different export classes, and because everything on Godot works this way, where you have a abstract base class, And then for each operational system, we're going to have the derived class from that abstract base class. And then most of the functions are going to use the base class as the type to call the function, because obviously you don't know what operational system is going to be using the function at runtime. So you just use the base class type, but the actual function that is running is the one that is related to the specific operational system. So everything starts with the editor node, which is the main node that creates the editor. It's just going to be a tree hierarchy that is going to be appended or added to the sync tree, which is the main thing that is used on the engine to render everything. So it starts from this class on the constructor. Then on the constructor of this class, it creates this project export dialog. And that's the thing that is going to open when you click the settings there. Let me open the editor again. And I studied this on the previous live streams, so but I think I definitely didn't go all the way because I was trying to figure out. But basically what I did is just search for the GUI elements, which I'm probably gonna keep doing to figure out everything else. You just search for the labels on the GUI editor, and then you Control F and search on the source code, or you go here and then just search for the keywords. And then from that point, it allows you to reverse engineer the path to there. And that's pretty much what I did. So this is the editor node constructor, and this is going to be the thing that is responsible for creating the export dialog, which is the GUI that opens up when you click on the project export. So on the constructor of this, it has the label here, which is the one, this is the button that's going to be responsible for the. So basically when you click export here, this is the class that is responsible for this class here. I'm trying to figure out, I'm going to look for this as well, export presets config, but I assume that on the initialization, what's going to do is just going to create the, when you click on the add button here, then there's a function there that I've seen that creates this file here, exports preset, and this file is going to have the state of whatever shows up here. I forgot to change the name there. Yeah, so this button here is going to be this one. And then what it does is just adds this event listener. So this adds event listeners, the connect function, to the class, the GUI element. And it sets up this function as a callback. And this is going to be fired once you click the button, obviously. So I don't remember. I think I've searched for this, but I don't remember exactly. The part that is very confusing is the event set on the file manager. Not file manager, the file dialog, which is the GUI that opens up when you click the button. So when you click this button here, it opens up this thing here, and this is another GUI element. So the event, as far as I remember, there's a function that has a switch statement, and then it depends on the modes that the GUI is at. And depending on which mode, is going to call some different functionality. It's going to put the label of this as different, and then once you click this, it's going to file the past event, which is going to call this function here. And then on this function, it does a bunch of stuff, but at the end, there is the thing that opens the, so this part here, this export project is the class that creates, is a class that is a member function of a member variable of this project export dialog, which is the main class that initializes everything. So this class here is the file dialog thing, editor file dialog, name of the class. And this is the class that is responsible for creating the file dialog here. And then these two functions here are the ones, so this one sets the mode of the button, this button here, as far as I understand now, which is the part that I didn't like that much because it's kind of confusing. And this one uses the display server class, which is a class that manages the window on the engine and then manages the rendering system. So there's a bunch of stuff. On the previous streams, I showed a little bit of how it works there on the display server. It initialize other classes that initialize Vulkan. I'm using on this time the Vulkan instance. I don't know very well how the OpenGL is because the thing that I'm stepping over here, the source code, is for Vulkan. But for the Vulkan, when you're using Vulkan, then that display server is going to initialize other classes that are going to initialize the Vulkan pipeline, and the display server is the one that initializes the window and holds the state of the window inside of it, if I remember. So this function here calls this one, which is going to open the thing, if I remember correctly, and this one just focus the file tags. So this one uses the display server because this is a global class. So I was accessing the global class that I initialized in the beginning. Let's set up everything. I didn't spend a bunch of time on this one, but just basically based on this here, you can see that's opening the thing there. And the part that is confusing is that on this one, it sets the event here, which is the stack submitted event. And the only place that emits this event is on the file, the editor file data, which is a member variable of the editor file dialog class. So when you click, basically when you click on the save here, it's gonna fire this event, which is gonna run the file submitted function, which was set up here the first time that it runs. So it's kind of confusing because of that. And the way that this works is by this thing here. So this is the function I was talking about. So here it passes this mode save file, mode save file. So file mode save file, which is this option here. And this is gonna, as far as I understand now, I'm confused, a little bit confused about this part, so I'm not 100% sure. But just basically based on the name here, you can see that it's gonna set the OK button, which is probably a generic button that they use here. So depending, because this is gonna be used in a bunch of parts of the application, depending on the states there, on how you set the modes, it's gonna show a different label here, which is gonna be based on this function here. Yeah. So let me think. So I'm gonna go. I think I'm gonna go over the. This is the function for opening the file thing, the file GUI there, file selection GUI. I'm gonna go back again to the SkyDraw, continue to work for now, or to see from there. But maybe before I do that, I'm gonna show the function here. So actually, I'm gonna I have to look again here because I wrote down here, which this line edit is the one that is gonna trigger the event, and it's based on a GUI input function. So the GUI input function of this class here, which is a member variable of this. Oh yeah, it's on the constructor of the editor file dialog. So this one is initialized on the constructor of the project export dialog. Let me show here. Actually, see if we can find here. Yeah, so this is a member variable of this class, which is the first class that it calls there. Remember in here. So first on the editor node constructor, then you initialize this project export dialog, which is going to be the main GUI of the export settings. Then inside of this, there's a member variable, which is this other class, which is this project export here. Which this one is going to be the one that is this. So the first class that is initialized on the constructor, the editor node constructor, is this GUI here, which is the main one. Then a member variable of this one is this class here, which is this GUI that shows here. And then this GUI that shows here has a member variable, which is called file, if I remember correctly, and initializes that on the constructor. Let me just go to the here. So this member variable here is going to be the one that triggers the text submitted event, which is this line edit thing here. So initialize this member variable. This is a member variable from this GUI element here. And I assume, but I'm not 100% sure about the details, but I think that's the only thing that makes sense, because when I search there for text submitted, the only thing that shows up is that, the only thing that is relevant that shows up is that class, a function of the class. So I assume what's happening is that once you click the save event, that function is gonna emit the text submitted event, which then is going to call that function that it sets up on the main function that this class calls, which was the function that it signs up on the events there. But I don't remember. I think I didn't spend time checking to see. I'm going to search that later, because obviously this is going to be triggered, but I don't remember exactly how this works. At what point this branch is emitted. But it's probably something to do with the inputs, but it doesn't matter, because I know that I'm very confident that this flow of execution is how it works. So I don't know how this is triggered, but I know that it is going to be triggered when you click the button there, and then it's going to call this function. This function is going to set up the event listener here, and then it's going to open the file dialog, which is based on the member variable of this class, which, like I explained, is going to call the member variable of this class here, which is the file. And that file is gonna trigger, it's gonna fire the event. So basically, when you click on save, if it triggers this event text submitted, which is gonna call this function here, which is set up here, and this is gonna call the action press. And the action press is gonna call this other event, which is the file selected. So this files selected, and the file selected here. And then once it triggers this event, there's another class that is subscribed to this event, which is related to the other one. So on the same constructor here of this other class, it has this other, it connects this event to the same project, export project. So it basically is gonna call this function because it triggered on the other one. So the other one, remembering, opens the other GUI. Then from the GUI, once you click the button, it's just gonna emit the event, which is gonna call the other function that was subscribed there, which is the one that has the action pop-up. The action pop-up triggers the other event, which is this event here, which is gonna call this function here. So ultimately, it's gonna get to this function. This is what I mean when I say it's extremely confusing, but hopefully it's understandable by now. And I don't remember exactly where, but I think that this is also initialized. Oh, is a member variable of this class as well. And I remember going over this one, but this one basically is this class here is a member variable this. So, oh, it's on the editor. Yeah, the function itself is gets from the editor export, so it's not a member variable. You're just gonna call this function. This function is gonna use the editor export, and the editor export is the class that sets the path, the standard path on Windows, which is gonna be the AppData path that I showed. So this function here, this class here sets up this path, and it uses the OS class to do that. And in this one I showed on the other streams that I was studying this. But basically, this is what's happening. What happens? This one sets up this path here, of the export templates. And then it's gonna get the presets from this call here, I think. If I remember, I'm not really sure. Basically, so just to recap, so these open the project exports GUI, then it opens the file dialog GUI. Then the file dialog GUI uses the editor export to get the class that is gonna have the data that is related to the exports, which is the data of this configuration here that holds the configuration. And then this one is going to save on its platform another class, which is this editor export platform Windows class. So basically, yeah, here, the platform is going to be stored on this class here. So when you do this, the platform is going to be this other editor export platform. And this one is the base class of this one. So it's the thing that I showed here in the beginning. So this is the base class. Depending which kind of OS you're using, is going to call the function from the derived OS and not this function. So the type there on the function is this one, but it's actually calling a function. In my case, it's going to be the Windows one because it's calling from the derived class because it's an abstract base class. So this is the main platform, and this is what's happening when you call the export project here. So it's going to call, this is going to be one of the main functions that is responsible for actually exporting the file. So creating the executables. Actually, it's like it calls from the Windows, but the Windows inherits from this other one. Let me, because now I don't remember I'm pretty sure that the order that I wrote there on the scheduler is the correct one. So sometimes on the VS Code, when you click on press F12, it just goes to the wrong definition, but it is supposed to be this one. And then it's going to call this one later. So I think it's this one that gets called first, which is going to be relative to this one. Forgot what's... Yeah, I think it's this file here. So it's going to call this function actually from here. And it passes these parameters here. This is the current preset, which is going to be related to the file there, the exports presets config, which holds the data for the configurations here. Just passing that data here. And then it's passing whether or not you're exporting the debug version. I'm not really sure about the nuances, but I assume that is related to the buttons you click here or whatever. And then the export path is the, I'm not 100% sure, but I think it is the path you're gonna export the file to. So this path here. Yeah, export path. So it should be this path here. So basically it calls this function, then it gets configurations from the preset, which is the file. So I'm gonna open the file. Hopefully I can open from here. Just see if it is here. Yeah, so it's basically getting from this file here. So you can see that here you have custom template debug. So it's just, and there is a function related to this. Maybe I'll search for this later, but there's a function that parses this file here and stores everything to variants, which is another class that Godot uses to interface with GDScript and to work as a bridge between different classes. It's kind of confusing, don't remember it all. Yeah, but here I don't have anything, but it's basically getting these values here from this file on here because it stored this on the preset, which is the editor export preset, which initialized there on the beginning. I know it's very confusing, but yeah. So this function here is gonna find the path basically through the AppData. So all that this function is doing here is just finding the path here to the exports templates. So I'm gonna show there. It's just finding this path here, this path specifically, and then checking to see. So this is gonna be the template path, just the path to the templates you have installed on the AppData. It uses editor paths, the exports templates. There is going to be based on Windows. The current version is going to be the version you're exporting to. So it's the version of the folder that you put here. That's the current version here. It's the name here. And the template file name is the file that is going to serve as the executable, final executable. So this one gets from there here. The gets data there is the main directory there. The exports template folder is just going to be exports templates, which is this folder here. So the data folder is this one, and then the export templates folder is this one. And this one it gets from the initialization of this class, which is on the constructor, which uses the OS class, which is another abstract base class, and then depending on which kind of operating system you're using, you're just gonna get it's gonna call a function from the derived operating system. So this, for example, is not calling from the OS thing, it's calling from the OS Windows if you're compiled for Windows. And same thing here. And this is gonna call a Windows function that is gonna. So basically, as far as I understand, the roaming path there, the AppData roaming path, where they put this stuff, is a standard path where usually applications put stuff on Windows, like this path here. You can see that there's a lot of different applications here. So it's just a Windows function you call, and then it's just a standard path you put stuff. And I think I don't remember really well, but it doesn't matter that much. I'm pretty sure this is what's happening. This one is from the, so this one specifically is from the game path, but I know that the function there returns, or at some point is gonna find the template path is gonna be the other one. So it's probably getting this one for something else. Not really sure. I think this one I looked into on the previous stream. I don't remember really well. Maybe it's this other one. This is the part that I remember that it's kind of confusing. So if you have a file with this extension here on the root of your project, then it's going to be a different configuration. But if you don't have the file, it's just going to, this one is just going to build everything inside of the project instead of looking for this standard path on Windows. So it's going to create an editor data folder on the root of your project. Just like in this case here, would create editor folder here. And then you would put everything on the same folder. But if you don't have this, then you're just going to look for the AppData path. And I think is the data path that it searches for, which is, I don't remember really well, actually. I don't remember this, so data dir is the one that I was looking for. Yeah, so it's this one. Yeah, this one. So this one, if you press F12, so this is the path there that is gonna join. So this is the path of this data dir path here is gonna be this one. And then it's on the other function there is gonna join this path with the export templates, then later with the version, and then with the name of the final file there. But this one, if you press F12, it's just gonna go for the function definition of this class, if I remember correctly. But that's not the function that it's calling. So in this case, it goes here, which is just gonna be .godot, which is not correct. So on Windows, if I remember, just OS Windows. And this is the oh, it's not this one, it's another one. I think it's on config path here. Yeah, this is the function. So get data path. So maybe it's it's this one, this one. Yeah, this is the function that is gonna get the, so maybe it's this. I think it's this. I'm pretty sure, like on the other function, I'm sure that it is that path, because otherwise it wouldn't make sense. But now I don't remember the nuances here, but I'm pretty sure that it is this function here. So this function is just gonna call this other function, and this is gonna call some function on Windows that is gonna find the path there or that data, which is this function here. And then it's gonna join there with the other stuff. Yeah, so basically this is gonna be that path. And then it's gonna return that path here. And then this function is gonna call another function, if I remember. Might have to go again on the ScaleDraw thing. But yeah, pretty sure. Yeah, so this one calls the other, which is the one that's VS Code went there in the beginning. So after it gets that path, it's gonna call this other export project from the editor, because this class here inherits from export PC. So it inherits from this one. I'm gonna close the other stuff. I think the nuances of this path here on the other streams that I did is probably a lot more clear because I studied this. Because now I don't remember really well the specifics there, but it doesn't matter that much because I'm pretty sure that the template path is gonna be the path of the AppData there. So it's just getting the, and this template is just gonna be the engine compiled with the template flag. So if you get the source code and you compile it with the target equals template, then it's just gonna create, it's gonna be the same executable that, it might be different for different options, but it's pretty much the same logic. Because you can run the game if you put this on the folder, final folder there as well. So yeah, this function then is gonna do some stuff here, and then if you have some other configurations, I think is related to OpenGL, it's gonna look for or create stuff related to DLLs. But I just skip this stuff because I'm on the thing that I'm focusing there doesn't have this. It's just additional options, and then it's gonna call. Ultimately, the main function that matters is this one. Then this is the final one, and this is the one that builds the, and it on the original source code doesn't have the comments here, but I put here to make it easier to understand. It's just the three main functions that are gonna build all the files there at the end. So this one is the main one. This one is responsible for creating the final executable of the game. This one uses RC edit to add the additional information to the executable using RC edit on Windows. And this one is the one that creates the package .package file. Yeah, so those two are not necessary to create the final game executable. But if you don't use them, then obviously you're gonna miss on the information. So if I remember, the reason for having this is that it makes it easier to update the game, for example. So if you after you release a game and you wanna update the assets or something like that, then it makes it easier to just distribute a new version, as far as I understand. And this one is basically this one. And this is just gonna use the tier access class to copy the template. So the p path is the project path, which is the one that you put here. So it's the name of the executable, the final executable. And the template path is the path from the AppData. So I assume, and I'm pretty sure that this function here, which is the function from tier access, is copying the information of the executable on the template path that you selected there based on the name and based on the editor export or export editor class, or editor data, whatever, into this one with some command flags, and also creates this other console file there, which is I think a version of the executable that also loads with a console. So it's basically, yeah, I think that's pretty much it. So this is the main one. It just copies the executable. And this one, this, I remember I was confused. I'm gonna have to look at. But basically, it doesn't go to the right one. Yeah, this one is on the Windows. So because is the, or maybe it's from the base. Maybe it's from the editor exports that it's calling. I don't remember now. Oh, so it is from the Windows. So even though it goes here to the editor PC, it doesn't have. So this function here is actually calling from here. which is this function here. And this is the main function that is gonna change the executable with RC edit, which is not necessary to create the final executable, but it allows you to add additional information. So basically what it does is just manually builds the commands and that uses another function to call the command. Oh, there's also icon that it passes there. I use ChatGPT to ask what RCEdit is, and it's not that difficult. So the args here, the first args that it pushes is the project path, which is the name of the executable. So again, this name here. So the way that RCEdit works is that you call the RCEdit executable, then you put the name of the executable you want to change, and then the other arguments are going to be what kind of information you're going to add to the executable. So here is just getting again from the P preset, which is the class there, that the editor export class that has the information, editor export preset, that has the information from this file here. That is set there on the beginning, initialized in the beginning, probably parses this file in the beginning there. Or when you click the add thing here, it's just gonna store the configuration there on the preset config file. So it gets the information based on the file, and then if you have the information, you just pushes other arguments. So it's just building a giant command here on the args that is going to call rcedit. I think rcedit is called later. Yeah, so this is the main one. So this, again, is going to be OS Windows. Just going to execute the command. So this is the path that, and this path here, it gets from, is the path of the rcedit. It gets from this line here, and that's the reason why I have to set on the editor. So this is a macro on Godot. So basically the way it works, as far as I understand now on Godot, is that they have a bunch of relative paths that work internally on the classes in order to manage, to determine the structure of the files. So this path here is not related to the source code, it's related to the way the structure is on the things here. So editor settings is this path here. So it's basically this rcedit here. So it's on export, Windows, rcedit. Export Windows, then rcedit. So it's gonna use that macro to get whatever path you put here, and this is gonna be the path of the rcedit executable you downloaded. And then it's gonna pass this path here, and remember that's the first thing that puts on the args there is the name of the final executable you're gonna have. And this is after you created you copied the template from the template presets you have, or the export templates you have from the AppData. After you copied that to the final executable, so that the final executable is pretty much the same as the export templates now. It's gonna put that executable, the name on the args as the first args, and then it's gonna call the function with the rcedit path first, then all the other args depending on the export's presets config. Yeah, so it is this function, so it calls from OS Windows. And this function is just going to use some Windows stuff to execute the command. This is pretty much equivalent of running on the command line, the thing. And what this is going to do is just going to add the information to the final executable. And the most confusing functions are related to the package file. So after it calls this to, which this is pretty much the only things related to the actual game executable, and this is just going to be related to the package file that it creates there, and this function is very confusing. So the main one that it calls is this save back here, and what this is going to do is just like the same as the other ones. It uses dir access and file access to create folders and files, and then it slowly builds the file based on the information you have there on the project. So it manually writes the bytes, I think, to a buffer, and then uses the buffer to puts everything on the file. This is related to the options. I'm pretty sure, I don't remember actually. Maybe this is on exports presets. Yeah, so it's here. So this is when you click on true there. I remember initially I had this false, so I know that that's the value. So this is this option here. So when you click on, then is this option here, and then it's going to use this option to determine whether or not it's going to put the information of the package in the same file as the executable. So this is the main function that does that. This one is very confusing. Basically, this one is going to call this other one, and it's going to pass this callback arguments, and then it's going to have some control flow logic on this function. Then based on that, it's going to call this one, and this is going to be the main one that saves that writes the information to the package file. So yeah, the confusing part is remembering which all this stuff is. The p path is the path. The confusing part is this PD here, because it uses this to store information, as far as I remember. And then it's going to use this, it's going to loop over this later here, and it's going to write more information there. And the p embed is whether or not you selected the option there to embed. So if you didn't, you're just going to open the file as write, which is the project path file, because it's going to write them on separate files. It's going to write the package on one file and the thing on the other. But if you select it, then it opens as read and write, because it's going to write on the executable. So here is writing. So this is the file. It's the package file, if I remember. Then it writes using this function here. And this comes from the packed thing there. Oh no, this is this one. So never mind. This is it comes from the final thing. But yeah, I have to spend a bunch of more time to understand which I'm not really sure if I'm gonna do because it doesn't matter that much to me, but yeah, I want to understand now what is the difference between this one and the other version, just see how it works. So how is this related to the project godot? And it's gonna be harder to understand that because the project godot is related to the whole project, and it's probably related to the project settings. So I did the steps here. The main thing that I'm gonna try, I'm gonna read this stuff as well. So I'm gonna finish going over the flowchart, schedule it out, then I'm gonna read this stuff, and then I'm gonna continue to do this list here. Next thing I was gonna do is figure out how the export presets is loaded there exactly, which I think is not gonna be that difficult. But then the difficult one is gonna be understanding how the project godot is related to the other stuff. So which I think it is just changing data on the project settings file. But basically, this is the main function for loading, and this is gonna get this thing here, this data, and then it's gonna use the same struct here on some other functions inside of this callback function to write data to this struct here, and that's the reason why it's very confusing. But basically, ppath is the project's path. This one I don't remember. This is the whole presets of the thing, which comes from the exports presets. And then it has this callback here, and then it has this which initializes here. So I think this one is the one that is the callback there. So basically, I didn't go through in depth into all these functions, but in general, it's just finding the configurations of the project, like the resources and the dependencies, stuff like that. Probably bring out what modules you're using, things like that, I think. Just getting project settings, props. Oh yeah, and there is an option. There are options if you want to encrypt the thing. So I think it's not only here, but on the other function there. I don't remember. Maybe just on the resources, I think. Yeah, it's probably only related to resources because it doesn't make a lot of sense to encrypt the engine, because the engine is not the thing that matters the most. Because what differentiates each game is the data. So, but if you put some options there to encrypt, then it's gonna call these other functions. It's just gonna call other algorithms using an external library that they have on the third party. That's just gonna create encryption on the bytes that it writes to the file. It's gonna be the package file, the final package file. Then also checks to see for the plugins here. I think it loops over the plugins. And so this is the callback. This is the one of, yeah, this one is the sign object function there that also sends as a callback. But this is the main callback, which is a save data pack, which is the final function. And then this PU data, if I remember correctly, is the pack data that initialized on the other function. So it's calling the callback function, passing that as an argument here. Or maybe it's this one. I don't remember now very well. But I do remember that I think it's probably this one, which is the one that is also passed. Yeah, so here. So this is passed as a void pointer. If I remember correctly, this is passed as a void pointer. There's this data here. And this is the callback that is calling there, which is the pfunc. This callback here. So basically, based on the configurations, it does the control flow. And then it calls here at several different points that other callback function, passing the void pointer as an argument. And here is also, I believe, if I remember correctly, these functions here are just creating hashes of these files on either the roots of the project or this path here. I don't remember which one. I think it's probably here. Yeah, so this file here. So, but yeah, I don't know if it's on here. It's maybe it's another place. I do remember there. Yeah, I don't remember exactly where, but it's along these functions that it creates these files here. Maybe it's the other. I don't think it's here. So there may be somewhere else that it creates the. Yeah, whatever. Also, there's another path that I remember reading in the documentation that godot uses to cache everything, but I didn't spend time searching for this. But I do remember that somewhere in the documentation that I read, they also store the cache data on another path that is a standard path on Windows to cache stuff. So let me go to the final function there. So the final one that it calls is this, and this is going to be the one that writes to the file. So remember that this is the void pointer, which is the pack there. So that void pointer, which is the first argument, is this struct here. It passes as a void pointer. And then it's going to cast that to pack data here. And that's the part that was kind of confusing to me. But basically what is happening here is that this is just pointing to the same location in memory that initializes here. So it's like you're creating a pointer through functions. So you're sending the original one. And the reason why you send as a void pointer is because I'm not 100% sure actually, but probably because you don't know, probably because this function can be called in different ways. So yeah, but I'm not 100% sure. But this basically just casts to the type here. So this PD here is going to be a pointer to that location on the first function. And then this is going to be the thing that is used to write to the file. So there's also this other thing here. This other struct that is based on this one. as well. So remember that the PDF is the file. So this, if I remember correctly, this is going to be the project file. So it creates a temporary path. Or maybe it's not the project file. The final package file. So it's basically based on this stuff here. It creates a, so it gets from cache, or it creates this temporary path, which is probably going to be something used to create the package. I didn't see the nuances of this yet. Yeah, so is this thing is going to store here. So it's basically this stuff here that it gets from here and from here. And this one is going to be this one. So this is if you have the encrypted option there, which is basically on this loop here. And then he writes, I think this is the final function that is going to write the data to this one. And this is what I mean, what I don't like that much, because it's very confusing. So basically this is going to be the file there from the other function. This ref is a custom reference that they create. So you can imagine that this is pretty much, it's like similar to doing this. Either the pointer or the reference. It's like similar to doing one of the two, but it's a custom way because they use a memory pool in Godot to optimize the data. So they create these custom classes to put their own functionality whenever stuff happens that is related to resources. And it's a templated class that is going to be initialized based on whatever class you pass here. So when you instantiate this, so when you call this, it's going to initialize the class. It's going to call the constructor of the class you initialize the ref with. The instantiate initializes this class here. So if not encrypted, then it's just going to store the buffer based on this p data, which is the SOL files. The p data, if I remember, is, so this p data here is going to be the SOL files here, if I remember correctly. But I don't, yeah, these SOL files. Yeah, so vector is shared object. But I'm pretty sure that this is the case, but I'm not 100% sure. Because it's passing from here. I'm not really sure though. Maybe it depends on the way it calls there on the other function. I don't remember really well. This is the part that was most confusing to me. So, and this is the external library that they use to encode the information. So after it does that, it's still gonna write more stuff to this file on the other function. So it does all that, and it's pretty sure that this was the one that's writes information there. This doesn't have a, I couldn't find, like it's weird because it just returns true or something like that. So I'm not really sure if it's going to the right definition, but yeah, it just returns this error or fail. But I'm pretty sure this is, because I couldn't find anything else that makes sense, would make sense for the, that is actually writing on the file. So obviously what I can do is just comment this stuff out and then see what happens. Yeah, but after it does that, then it's gonna do some other stuff here to, just basically based on this stuff here, to write on the, to create the file, the final file. This is another main stuff that it's gonna do. It's gonna add header, but this is the other, is the executable there. It adds a header format version. to the engine executable file, which is the export template file. There's this one, which is the project path. So here it loops through these files, and it's writing stuff on the executable as well. And this is not required to run, but it's probably better to put this stuff there, because probably allows you to have a versioning system on the game that you create, and other stuff like metadata. Oh, so this is the same path that I had there. And so probably this is related to the package data thing. And it's weird that it doesn't have any control. It has here actually. So I guess here is gonna store this information that comes from this, which is the based on the temp path there that it passed on the other function. This thing here, she uses on this one, which is stored on this one, which passes through this, which is gonna be just a pointer on the other one, so it's gonna fill this stuff with information. But I'm not really sure if it affects this one. Maybe not. Yeah, I think it doesn't. So it just uses the same path to open this. Or maybe it does because it's just a pointer. So the other function is writing to the file, and then when you open it here again, the file that you're opening was modified. But this is just read, so it's gonna read the information. And so it's just storing the information. It probably did write stuff there on the save data packed thing. On the last function that I showed there is just the callback of the other one. You probably wrote information on this one, and then is reading now, and putting this stuff on the buffer, and then is using that to write on the other, just the main engine executable. Not sure though. Then if you have the embedded option, it's gonna do this other stuff here. Yeah, that's pretty much it, I think. That's the whole flow of the thing. And the only difference, as far as I understand, I didn't spend a bunch of time, but just from the video I've seen there, it seems like the export all. So there's this other button here, export all. And I think all that this button does is that if you have several different OS platforms here, then you click here and then it's just gonna loop. So it's gonna, because each export preset you put there is gonna save on a file. And I forgot which function it is. Is one of the file edit, or maybe you can show that, so you can search for that. There's one of the file here. I don't remember if it's here. Oh, is this one? So the recent dirs. This one is just gonna store. Oh, but I think this stores the projects. I don't remember, but maybe it is. No, I think this is just projects. But because it's a list, if I remember correctly, there's some of this, either the class that holds the information for this GUI or some other class, it has a list of export presets. And obviously each OS is going to be one export preset on the list. So all that this button here is going to do is just going to loop over all the presets, and then it's going to pretty much call the same functionality for each one. But the reason why it doesn't show up here on mine is because I have to, if I want to export to Mac OS, I have to change some setting here. It doesn't matter that much to me now. So yeah, but to figure this out, all you have to do is just search for the names there, all the labels. The biggest part that I didn't like is that it's very confusing to understand the events and some of the functions, especially in the end and both in the beginning there, where it sets the events on the when I actually click the button. It's kind of confusing, and on the end of the package data, just save the understand what is happening when you save the data on the package file. Basically this one. So it's pretty much the same logic, just calls another function. Oh, actually, I think I skipped. I don't remember now. If I'm gonna look in the here, because now I remember that there's another function that's called export all files, but I'm not really sure if it's or if it was just something that I was looking at. Basically, let me go again from the beginning here. So the editor file dialogs, the member variable, this one, this is the main one that is initialized here, which is the GUI here. The project export dialog constructor, this function subscribes to event listers on the export project button. The editor file dialog class is the one that creates the file save GUI windows that opens after the export project button is clicked. Line edit file, new point. Line edit is the only place that emits the text submitted signal, which is the button on the GUI here. This button here. Or yeah, I think I'm gonna go over this one because it was confusing. So here, I'm gonna close everything else. So this function, this class, basically this is the only place that it emits. The way that it works on the events is that, as far as I understand now, could be wrong, but basically based on what I've seen, the way that it works, like the object class is the root class, where everything that is going to show on the GUI and the on visualizations is going to inherit from the object class. So object class is the parent of everything. And then on the object class, you have some structs there that hold information for events. And the way that you subscribe on each of these classes on events is just by using the connect function. So it's very similar to the way that you works on the front end. So the connect would be add event listener. And then you put the callback, which is the function that is going to run when the event is emitted. And then same thing that happens on the front end, I think, if I remember correctly, where the way that you emit events is just by using this emit signal function here. And this is the only place that I remember that I could find this event. So and this function is related to the GUI inputs. So I imagine that what happens is that once the engine is traversing over the string tree, it's gonna check on functionality for each node of the tree. And then if they have events or whatever, it's gonna call the function that they signed up there or something like that. So imagine that once it's doing that, it's gonna call this function here. And then it's gonna, if you click on because this line edit is the file, which is the member variable from the class that creates this GUI element here. So I think when you click the save button there, it's just gonna emit the text submitted. But I didn't understand this part very well. I think that the one that I wanted to review was the. So this is from the object class. You can see here. So yeah, I think that everything is stored on the object class. Events are stored on the objects. And it's basically based on the signal data. I remember going over this on another stream, but I still don't understand very well how it works. But it's basically based on this here. So I think that the connect function is related to this struct here. And then the callback, yeah, I remember that I went over based on the connect function directly. So, and that one, you create another class, and then you pass that to a function, and then the function creates another class, I think, and then you pass that to a function. And I think it's gonna just create the data in the object that is gonna subscribe to events, and then call the, based on the message queue there, it's just gonna call the callback function whenever something emits the event, I think. So I think this is the one that so this function is from that thing there, and the file is gonna be the, this is what I want to understand, is this thing here. So the file there is from this one, so it should be just the line edit, which is the thing that emits the event. And this comes from another class. Oh yeah, so inherits from this one. So imagine that this, I think that the reason why they did it like this is because they wanna reuse the same GUI for a bunch of different places. So the functionality has to be generic. And then they used the switch statement to determine the functionality depending on what place you're using. So just set the mode. I guess what I can try is just compile. I think this is a good idea. I'm gonna change the function there and compile with a different name to see when I click there if it's savior or something else. I'm pretty sure it's gonna be something else. But then that would be weird because this is the thing that is confusing, because if it's the OK button, then how does it work? Because it's supposed to be the file with the one that has the event listener. I guess I have to look into the constructor of this again. This thing is a macro used to set up the key short, yeah, shortcuts, the keyword or keyword shortcuts on the thing. So the title is gonna be this thing here. Save a file. I guess I have to search for the pressed. I think it's the press. Is this class probably that emits the pressed event? But that wouldn't make sense. Yeah, so this is the. No, that should be the file. Maybe it's a VS Code thing that is going to the wrong definition. Could be. So initialize this here. And as for the file box, and this also connects to the. Well, so maybe it's on this function. But I mean, it doesn't make sense. And the question is, so I have to like. The thing is that it doesn't connect with anything here, but maybe the other things. So this is a child of this, the child of this. So I have to see. The tricky part is understanding when the events are triggered. Because like the thing that doesn't make a lot of sense is that to me that is not very clear now is when you click the button there, like obviously it's gonna call this one. I think it doesn't matter for me that much right now to. Oh, actually, I think I skipped this. This is the step that I missed there, but maybe not. Oh no, I talked about this, yeah. Because it starts off on this one and then it triggers the event on the other one and then it calls a similar function to this. The part was confusing. Yeah, it just calls this one after. But maybe I am missing something. Because I think that to understand the past event there, it doesn't matter that much to me now. So I'm trying to understand after it's already. So after this function is gonna run. So I'm pretty sure this is the main one that is gonna open the file thing. So yeah, but it's like still confusing because this is gonna depend on the past event, and I'm not really sure how the past event works yet. But I know it's gonna run this stuff, and then it has the export presets, which is another thing that maybe I should figure this out now. So it's gonna be on the constructor of this that initializes. So it's probably gonna probably on the constructor, or maybe when I have to figure out the add button there. When is this button initialized? Because I'm pretty sure the functionality that creates the export presets thing is related to this, but I remember that I found a function there that is gonna get this based on the config, and then if it doesn't have the thing, then it's gonna create the file using the file access dir or file access class, one of those classes, and it's gonna write the configuration based on whatever is the state of this class, I think. There is a function on the main editor node, which is the _fs underscore changed. That function is the only one that I saw that is related to the editor node, that is also related to this other export stuff. And there is some comments there that it says that it is hacky to put stuff on that. And that function is gonna call whenever there is a file system access change event or something like that. But I don't think that's the first place where it sets everything up. Just for now. So I'm trying to understand. I'm gonna do this other. I think I explained. So let me finish going over this. Then I'll read this stuff there. Then I'll continue. So basically, it goes. This one is just related to getting the AppData path there. Edit export memory variable export platforms. Oh, so this class is gonna be a member of this, I think, and it's gonna be probably, so this one is probably the one that I was talking about, that it stores the list, which has all the presets you have here, and then it's basically gonna store them as export platforms. Let me see that. Basically here, so it stores on a vector of references. So this is the main class that is gonna store the platforms and the presets. So each time you add there, so the functionality to add is probably related to this one. Let me. I'm not sure if it initializes here or, yeah, so initializes here, which is also probably direct node of the editor. Maybe not. Oh no, it is on the constructor here. I think it makes more sense to be here. But maybe they're not. I think they are. The project export dialog is not directly correlated with the, which is kind of confusing. But I guess it makes sense because probably editor exports is more related to the whole editor, and this is just the GUI that is responsible for creating this stuff. So I think it does make sense. It makes sense, but it's kind of confusing to learn because the names are very similar. But I think the editor export is going to store data. Uh, that's the one probably that initialize everything and stores the data. And then the dialog just gets data from this class here. So in timeouts, and this is, I think this is the function related to the that I was seeing, but I searched from this thing here that is related to the config file. So this is gonna parse the file there, and this is probably related to the. It has to be related to the button as well. So initially, it calls the constructor of the config file, and then, or maybe it's just saving the exports already set up. So the other functions, the add, whatever that function is related to the add button, this thing here, it's probably gonna call this function at some point, which is gonna use this config to write to the config, the presets config class, exports presets. I'm pretty sure that this is what's happening. So this is translating the data on the GUI to the file, I think, using this config class. Yeah, config save exports presets. So this is what's happening. Let's see the. Also here, oh, it's this file here. Yeah. And again, uses the file access, which makes sense. I think it's not, these parts are not that hard to understand, I think. So it just has two main classes that are gonna deal with everything related to writing files and directories. There's the file access and the dir access. So, and now the only thing I have to figure out. So I guess what I can do is, but the thing is, like, how does it call that there? That's the. I assume that it calls like this because it's not passing inside of the constructor of this class. It doesn't have anything. Oh, so it is getting from this. So it gets the current presets just by calling directly here. This is just calls directly from the file, and this was initialized in the beginning. But I think in the beginning you shouldn't have anything. That's the thing. So I think in the beginning it doesn't have anything. I do remember going over some stuff related to this. Let me continue this stuff here. Yeah, so this is part of the member variable here, which is going to be related to the exports. Then the platform is going to be the other class, I think. The other class that has the function to find the export template, which is going to look into the AppData. This one uses the editor paths class to get to call this function here. So this is the class, this is the function. And class function as well. So this one calls the get data dir, which is that one that is going to call the OS that I showed there in the beginning. Just going to call a Windows function that is going to search for the AppData path. And then once those functions return, I think this one is the one that is going to call join path, and it's going to put the version and the name of the file later. Creates the imported folder on the project directory here. So this is the one that creates the imported folder, which is this folder here. And I think like here it only has the icons because that's the only thing that I have on the project. So the only file that I have here. But I think if you have more files here, it's just going to store everything that it uses as a resource on this folder with a hash here. And this is it's probably related to the package file there because I remember there's seeing this extension there. The last function that it calls to save the package data. It has stuff related to this. MD5. And this is related to the project settings now I remember as well. So this one is going to use, but I think that this is not really relevant to the project godot thing. Like, it's probably not the reason why it's fucking it up there. No. This is the next thing that I'm going to do after I figure this export presets thing. So after it finds the export template path, it calls this other one, which is the inherited from this one. And this one calls the three main functions that I showed there. This one is this creates copies the executable, uses RC edits. This function gets configuration from editor export presets class. Sets them up from the export presets config file, but I'm not sure. It's first time. So executes. This stuff already showed, so. Set dialog is the class that emits signal after button is interacted with, but it calls the custom action functions as well. It comes from a derived class. Figure out what these classes are. The main thing that I'm trying to figure out now, so the export presets config is not going to be that difficult, but the confusing thing is on the first function there that sets up the text submitted event, how does that work? But I think the reason why I didn't put this now is because it's probably related to the way that Godot's gonna manage inputs, which is gonna pull from Windows first before it renders everything from the previous times that I stepped over that I remember. So it's gonna call some Windows functions that pull the events because it initializes the window using some Windows function, and the display server class is the one that contains either directly contains the window data or initializes the class that contains the window. So it uses some Windows functions to pull the data for the window, and then after that, I think if I remember correctly, it's gonna loop over the scene tree And then for each node, it's gonna do some stuff. And I think that the line edit is probably like the only way that I'm gonna be able to figure out how it connects with the other one is going over that. So I'm not sure how long it's gonna take. So maybe it's better to do that after I do this, after I figure out the project stuff. But it's probably, I think I'm gonna do both of these at the same time because it's probably relatively, like they're probably connected. Uh, like as a step over again from the beginning probably. And I try to figure, or I'm gonna search obviously for Project Godot first to see relevant stuff, like all this stuff related to Project Godot. Then probably read the source code first, then set breakpoints, then I disable all the other breakpoints. And I'm probably gonna use, actually, now that I remember, it's probably better to compare the projects first. To understand how is it possible. I want to understand what is the 4 point, what is this version doing this different than this one? Because obviously I think this one is better because it's better if you can run the executable without having the project go out, because then it allows you to not expose the information. And then after I do this, then I think I wrote other stuff here. So I'm gonna read this stuff. I think I'm probably gonna stop streaming. I'm just gonna read this stuff and then I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna maybe actually let me search for the add functionality. So I'm gonna search for the add functionality, then read this stuff, then stop streaming. The problem is if I search for this, I think it's gonna be, oh, maybe not. So is this one, and so it's probably this one, this function here, add preset. So it's very simple, I think. But the issue is knowing how is this initialized. Export platforms. Because it should return nothing from here. Yeah, this is the thing because it's passing as, so I don't know what's gonna be the argument that this function receives when the event is triggered. So I guess I can look for where this index pressed event is emitted. I guess this is kind of the confusing thing to figure out is at what point, because it's probably going to be related to the input thing, the traversal of the tree. So it's hard to know. Because obviously it's the event associated with the button, but then at what moment it gets triggered. I think the only way to know this is by understanding how the mouse click event is going to be dealt with on the once it gets the inputs from the window, and then how it's gonna emit everything. But I can look for this and then see if I can find anything. Obviously, I have to find, otherwise it wouldn't call the function. So, but I'm not gonna understand the context probably, but just fine. So I assume that this is gonna create. So if this doesn't exist, I'm not maybe it returns a. But that's kind of the thing. So let me look into this thing again. It doesn't do anything here. So it doesn't build anything on the constructor. The question is, when does it put? I think it's on the. I remember now. It's gonna be on the constructor of this class, I think. But I don't remember at what point does it do that. But I think when it initializes. Yeah, but then like it wouldn't make sense. Because it has to create on this function. This obviously has to be true, otherwise it's just gonna. You would fail there when you click the add thing. I mean. Oh, so it's not directly this one. Oh, so this one is probably set up before because it's just standard things. Yeah, so the thing that's actually, so it's confusing the, so when you click here, it's gonna create another one. I was confusing this with the functionality that is actually gonna, supposed to create the export preset, but I think this preset is just gonna be the standard ones that it shows here. So it probably initializes in the beginning. So it gets the platform. Or maybe it's, yeah, I don't understand how it's possible. Like, because if it doesn't have a platform, so obviously this has to call with a platform. And so the only thing that makes sense is that either this class or somewhere else, the this each template for each operation system is going to be added into this class. And then whenever you click there, it's going to call the function as a callback, passing the ID, which is going to be an int of which one it is of these things here. And then that's going to return the platform, I think. Or the platform. And then it creates the preset for the platform on this function. So this initialize the editor export presets, and it saves the platform as this. Just creating a reference. Not sure if a reference is the. It is a reference. So it creates a reference to this, the class that called, which is the ID, the platform, these ones. And gets the options from here. And this is probably configurations. It's probably the default configurations you have for each template. So imagine each one is going to have a different default here. When you click, so when you add here, it has different options here. And this function is probably getting the default options that it has. Then it stores each option on the preset and returns the presets. This function is probably the one that creates the file. It's probably gonna call the other one. No, it's just adding the preset to the other thing. So it first initializes the platforms on the editor export. Probably does that on the other class. Then on this one, as you select, it's gonna initialize the export and push to the list. And then it emits this signal. I don't remember where I was. There's another function that I wanted to see. Oh, is this one? Is that its presets? Because this is the thing here, I'm not really seeing the function that's the save function there. Which is the function that writes the exports config file there, exports presets. So let me go back to the constructor of the other one to see if initializes platforms somewhere and appends to the exports thing. Yeah, let me go back. Oh, this is another class. The same function that the other one calls. I'm trying to see if I can find the one that's the save function from the exports, editor exports, to understand where it's gonna write the file for the first time. And based on the documentation as well, there's some parts that they say that you can export directly from the command line if you pass some different arguments to initialize. So I think for that reason, and after understanding everything here, I'm not going to spend too much time think understanding every nuance of every function because I think it's just going to take too long, and I'm better off just focusing on the main concerns that I have now. The main things that I'm focused now is understanding the inputs. I think that's probably one of the main things to understand now, and the other main thing is to understand the viewports. So I'm also thinking about how to and maybe these names here are a good idea because I'm thinking about how can I uh, And this is another thing that I'm going to look for, which is just these other tooltip things here. I'm going to look for example, add child nodes there, the description. I'm going to look there, that's on the source code, because I want to understand the functionality associated with the viewports, so I can draw stuff directly from code. And just understanding the flow of the files there, or the flow of execution, I can just change the code to call this stuff directly. Because now I understand that there's nothing special going on when you export. You're just creating uh, it's just copying the engine executable. So the main difference, and that's the whole way that they set things up, is that based on the build system, which is scons, there is some stuff on the Python files that are going to determine which flags, which arguments you're passing when you compile. And that logic is going to be the one that determines what the final executable is going to do. And the reason why, I think, is because there is some control flow, if I remember correctly, on the main function that parses the arguments that you pass. But this stuff is kind of confusing to me still, because I don't know, it's not very clear on my mind yet, the separation of the arguments in how scons uses the arguments you pass on the command here when you're compiling, and what part of those arguments are just related to godots. I think that the ones related to godots, there's a special keyword there, or a special way that they get. But it's still kind of confusing to me to understand how it works. But basically, this functionality here is going to be based on the arguments here. So, and there are on the documentation other examples, I think, on the modules as well, like the modules page on the documentation. They also talk about how you can create your own custom py file inside of a folder, and then you can add the custom functionality to compile a module or plugin that you're going to use. So you can add this file to the command line. But the other thing that you can do is just copy the function that they use to execute the RC edit, and basically just create other functionality that, instead of doing that, compiles the... I'm not really sure if it makes sense to compile. Maybe because you can also compile before and then just copy like they do there. Yeah, but it's not nothing. Oh, this is the thing that I was talking about. So as far as I understand, I think whenever they use this arguments keyword, this is scons, because scons is going to parse this file here, and then they probably have a functionality on scons that, based on this, allows you to encode logic in whatever arguments you're going to pass here. So here would be, for example, the optimize. If you pass the optimize command line argument here, it's going to get the value using this stuff here. And then it's going to use this, which is the main thing that scons use, which they initialize there in the beginning, is the scons configuration. And this is going to be used at the end to build the command that's going to compile all the files. Here, for example, I think is the target. So this is probably a flag variable that determines whether or not you pass the target equals editor argument here on the build system. And that's the main difference between the version of the executable that is going to run the engine directly expecting a project, and the version that runs the project manager. And also, the version that runs the project manager is the same one that runs the editor, and the main difference between them is just the arguments you pass through on the initialization. So if you pass the path and the path to a project, then it opens the editor automatically and not the project manager. But if you just call the executable, then it opens the project manager. If you build with the target equals editor. But the thing that is confusing to understand still is why on one version the executable is running anywhere, and the other one it depends on the project godot. And I think probably the reason is because the engine executable is gonna search for... There's probably the assumption that I have is just that in the beginning, when the engine is setting everything up, there's some functionality that is gonna check whether or not you have some values on the... But that wouldn't make a lot of sense. I guess the only thing that makes sense is that they probably have other stuff on the... But maybe that doesn't make... I think that they have to, on the 4.2.2 version, they have to change the final executable in some way, because otherwise it would just work if I pass the so let me see here, because I'm using the exact same exports template for both versions to create the final executable, and basically from what I done here, obviously it's just copying that executable, so just like it is copying the engine executable, and it's the same template that I'm using for both versions. So the main difference between them has to be in the way that, like the other one, the previous versions has to add something to the executable, I think, because that's the only way that makes sense. Because otherwise, if it was a default functionality of the source code, then it wouldn't work on both versions, I think. So I think that the previous version has to add something to the final executable, and not just copy like the 4.3 version. So if you try to run directly here, I'm pretty sure, yeah, it shows this, which is another misleading error because this doesn't require the package file like it says here. It requires the project godot file. So I do think that there is and this, I'm not really sure if I tested, sure. I don't think I compiled the 4.2 version to be the template. I just compiled the editor version. So I don't think I tested to run the what would happen if I compiled. It takes some time. I'm probably gonna do that upstream. So I'm gonna compile the 4.2.2 version, which is the stable version, to have the same format as this one, which is the template. When you pass target equals template, and run that directly to see if I'm gonna get the same error that I'm getting here. But I'm pretty sure, I think I tested this before. So if you run the executable on a file that has the project godot, it's just gonna work. So I think that at least on the latest version, the default functionality is probably the engine is gonna look on the project settings class, which is the settings that creates the project manager, the class that creates the project manager thing. And that one relies on the project godot to load projects. So the way that it works when you create a project from the project manager is just going to create a folder. So the project manager has the functionality that is going to create the project godot file. But this only happens when you have the version of godot, which is the editor version. So when you compile godot using target equals editor, it creates a different executable. Then when you run from that version, it's going to open the project manager. And I think the main difference in the compilation is that when you pass the target equals editor, it has some functionality probably on the build. It has to be on the build system. Yeah, because it's gonna. So the main difference is that it's gonna compile the files related to the editor probably, and the engine doesn't compile that. But then, so probably when you use the platform, I think it's target equals platform, which is just the engine executable version. What's gonna happen is that it's gonna look for a project godot configuration, I think. So on this version that I have now, which is the latest version, or it could be because, or maybe the reason is because, no, but I do think I tested. I was gonna say it could be because this version here is from the older version, like this executable here, and then I'm trying to create the game from the newer version. I don't think that's this case because I do think I tried compiling, not using the exports, because this one I got from the website, like I said in the beginning. So I think when you run the executable that is the engine one, it's gonna look for. It already assumes that you have opened the project, let's say. So it's gonna look if you have some configuration on the project settings. And if we export the embedded version, which means that the final executable is going to have the package data information on the executable itself. That means that it's going to be able to read from the metadata of the file and initialize the states of the project settings from the package. But for some reason on this other one, it requires you, because there's probably a function that loads on this version here there's probably a function that loads from the project godot settings. And when you don't have it, then it doesn't understand that you have the project. But then on the older versions, it doesn't require that because probably the configuration is embedded into the executable itself. I think that's the only thing that makes sense for now. But I'm gonna have to. Yeah, I just realized now that maybe I didn't test this because it could be because the way I did this is just by copying the folder. So it could be because I'm downloading the preset from the website. So I'm using the preset, which is a 4.2 executable, and trying to export from a 4.3 version. But what I did do was open the version py file here, and I changed this configuration on this one to be equal to the other one. So this is the main file on the build system that determines the version of Godot. But yeah, it could be that this is not enough, and maybe the other stuff works. So but I don't remember now if I did this or not. But because I can try again. So compile this one to be the engine, and then try to export using the engine as a template. I don't think I tried this one, so I'm gonna try this. And if it doesn't work, then I'm gonna compare the two projects. So I think I'm gonna read this stuff and then stop streaming and figure the other stuff off stream. Or maybe stream tomorrow and then try to figure out. So. Yeah, I wanted to start changing the code, but I think it doesn't make sense for now because like there's nothing very useful that I can do. Because the way that I was thinking about is that the exported executable is going to be different, but based on the code, there is pretty much the same. Like there isn't anything that I think is productive to do to change the file, the final file. The only thing that I can think about is the thing that I talked the other side before, which is just to use the same functionality that they use to run RC edit and then just export automatically without having to use so bypassing the GUI and then just creating, I have to clarify how they create the export presets config file, because that way then I can have an export default function, but I think that it doesn't, like it's not going to change much, because I think for that kind of stuff still makes more sense to just use the GUI. But maybe not actually. I think it's worth it to do that. Yeah, maybe it is worth it to like test to see, like create a new functionality that just runs everything automatically, so you don't have to select on the GUI, so it already exports. But the main question I have about that is because I would have to set up an event, because I think that if I did it like that, then it would export from when you open the editor, and obviously you would have to export every time that you add new resources. So I would have to attach a keyboard shortcut, I think, like Control S. But maybe it's a good thing to do so. But the problem is that if I do that, it might interfere with other stuff. And I think it doesn't make a lot of sense. So it's probably only worth it to start changing the code once I understand the viewport, because that's the main thing that I wanna, because that's how you create the game. So basically change the code to automate the process of creating the data that the game is created with. Then once I get to that point, then I think I can automate the process of exporting the game, because obviously what I want to do is just to create everything without have the option to create everything without using the GUI. So I'm not really sure if it makes sense to call, instead of copying the executable, for example, of an export template, should automatically compile the thing. So use the shell from the OS function to compile the engine again from the code itself. So open another process or something like that. Yeah, I'll think about it. I'm not really sure if I'm streaming with no tag. It doesn't matter that much to me. I don't know how to do that. Maybe it's edit string info. Oh, is very small here. I'm gonna do that. Oh, I just said it now, I think. Thanks for letting me know. So I'm gonna read this stuff and then I'm gonna stop streaming. These are a bunch of notes that I took as I was reading. I was trying to figure this out. So the game executable is just a copy of the executable store on the folder. Yeah, so when you try to run there without not on the same folder, it gives a segmentation fault if you don't have the resources on the same folder. But I think it's just with the latest version, like I said. So I think I'm gonna already said everything that I had to say. So I'm gonna stop streaming now, and I'm gonna study this a little bit off stream. Probably tomorrow I'm gonna continue to. Not sure if I'm gonna stream, but I'm definitely gonna continue to study this stuff. And after I clarify the exports presets config, I'm gonna compare the two versions. Then I'm gonna clarify the project how the project godot is related to project settings and the build system, which might be annoying. And after that, then I'm gonna start exploring or trying to figure out how this functionality here works and how to. And I think that once I get to the point, is the first time that I'm gonna start changing the code because to try to see if I can create like a game directly from the code, to add the scene and stuff like that. I have to think about how to create the code straight, create the game straight from the code, and also how to create it without having to use the editor. That's another tricky thing. Because ideally, I would have the option to create without having to load the editor. So the main thing is understanding how the resources are related to the engine. That's the stuff that I have to clarify. So I'm gonna write this down. Because that's the main thing that I think differentiates the editor. It's both the how you build the executable you run there, but assuming that you are building, yeah, I'm not too sure. I have to spend some time clarifying exactly, but I'm going to. I'm not gonna click this link, man. But I put here on the thing, but it doesn't matter that much to me also. But I'm pretty sure I put here the tag software development. Thanks for letting me know. Next time I'm gonna. Yeah, thanks for letting me know, Miss. But I'm gonna stop. I'm stopping streaming now. So next time I will search for this. So the main thing that I have to clarify is this connection between like these different builds that you can do to create the final executable. Either it's gonna run the engine or the editor, and then how does that relate to the data? To find the middle way that allows me to programmatically select which one I wanna do to create the final executable that is gonna run the stuff, the application that I'm going to build automatically. Oh, no worries, man. So And thank you for letting me know. So next time I'll look into this. So let's stop here and see you next time.